Thanks, Colleen. And I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today for this online community update. It's great to see a couple familiar names and many unfamiliar names. So thanks to see everybody here. While it has been an unusual year in many ways, there's still lots of important work underway for the electoral areas. We were happy to be able to host open houses and informational booths in 2019 and the early part of 2020 as part of an effort to keep electoral area residents informed about some of the ongoing initiatives. It's a priority for all of us here to see that outreach continue. And given the current public health conditions, we felt that an online option would be best at this time, most safe, certainly. The directors, as Colleen mentioned, directors have a number of important updates for you. And we as staff are here to help answer any of the questions that you might have and to receive your feedback. It's helpful for us to understand what is important to you, what is concerning to you, and what you'd like to see moving forward. We appreciate your participation in today's session, and we look forward to your questions. With that, I'll pass the mic over to Director Arbour.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I guess I'll just cover a couple of topics. One, a general topic affecting all of CVRD, and the other one more for Area A. So obviously this has been the year of COVID, and I want to update the community a little bit about how it has affected your local government and how we've adjusted to it. So obviously in March, COVID-19 caused massive disruption that is still being felt at the local government level. Right away, as when we started moving into shutdown, staff put in a tremendous amount of time into ensuring that our essential services such as sewer, water, solid waste services were operating, and that we were able to keep that staffed and operational. We also did a lot of partnerships with the community organization. I think there was a huge amount of interaction between community groups and the CVRD, and we supported both financially and in other ways, especially around housing and food security. As we moved through the spring and summer, we started expanding our focus and looking at next steps in terms of the possible future disruptions as a result of COVID. There was a lot of obviously uncertainty around the economy and what that could mean to local government. So one of the things we did was to create the Rethink Comox Valley framework, where we started looking at each of our services and look at risks and some adjustments that we could make perhaps to stay efficient. So in the summer, CVRD staff and the board, we reviewed and we looked at each of our service and prioritized what actions were critical, postponed maybe projects that were not as critical or could be done later, and resulting in some cost savings as well, and proposed changes to initiatives that would enhance local government response to COVID. We had four principles that underline sort of all this work in terms of key actions. So keep services affordable, realizing there's a lot of stress on our residents and households. Streamline services. So again, not that we ever think that we run inefficient government, but to even hone in even more where we could create synergies in delivery. Protect quality of life and care for the community through all those partnerships that we have in the communities. These focuses will ensure the successful delivery of CVRD core services in the months and years to come. So the next step is we will develop a revised budget for next year and beyond, and this work is underway through to the new year. If you're interested, I think Colleen at the end of this session will post a link to all of our presentation on the website that you can follow. I'll cover a little bit of each director will do that today. I'll cover an update on I know that a topic that's really important in Area A. Which is the long-standing issue around sewage. And particularly for those of you living in Royston and Union Bay, you probably received a newsletter in the mail in May providing an overview of a new opportunity that could bring sewer service to the communities. As many of you know, in 2016, a referendum for the South Sewer didn't go through, but we heard a lot of feedback, and chief among which was too expensive basically to create a service at the time. But since then, we've continued to look at opportunities as well as connecting with Comox First Nation, the key partner of the regional district, and Union Bay Estates. After I was elected, well, actually just before, in 2018, we initiated a review to look at what it would mean to connect into the municipal systems, just from a technical perspective, regulatory and impacts for both the municipalities and ourselves. That study was received, and then which led to some discussions with the Sewage Commission, and eventually for them to agree to receive wastewater from Royston, Union Bay, and Comox First Nation Southlands. So this was definitely a historical decision. It means that a new costly treatment plant in the south is no longer required. Rather, homes and businesses in Royston, Union Bay, and for Comox First Nation would be able to just have a pipe that connects into the municipal system. So we are now working on further assessment and technical evaluation of this option, including, of course, an analysis of what it would cost residents. We have applied for a major grant that we're hoping to hear in the next few months, in partnership with Comox First Nation and Union Bay Estates. So we've been working hard on that, connecting with provincial and federal counterparts. Once we have this information, we'll be able to come back to the community with numbers and basically explain a little bit more what that could look like for the community. We had hoped to start some of that engagement this fall, but with COVID and everything, we decided to just wait a little bit and wait for that information to come forward. In the meantime, we continue. I mean, it's not just Union Bay and Royston. We are looking at septic across all the communities in the regional district, including Hornby and Denman Island. And we also have a report that was tabled this spring to look at how to enhance septic outcomes in all of our rural communities, especially those that probably will never be connected to the grid. So that's sitting and for consideration. And we also have education program around septic maintenance. And most communities have seen one. I think there's, for those who haven't, there's one coming. I think there's one in Black Creek on November 25th. Denman Island just had one. And so, yeah, so we're always interested in how to forward that topic. So thank you. And with that, I'll pass it to Director Amir for her update.
Thanks, Director Arbour. And thank you again to everybody who's tuning in today. So I'm going to talk about air quality in the Airshed Roundtable, as well as a topic that it crosses all of the municipal and electoral areas. It's certainly a issue that I heard a couple of years ago as we were door knocking during the election that was really concerning to many folks in the Comox Valley. So one of the nice things about being on a regional district where we work collaboratively with the other regions is that this topic is just so complex. It sounded very simple early on, that it's not just primarily a wood smoke issue. We have geographical issues, weather issues that exacerbate our air quality, but it's certainly one that the whole valley struggles with. So to that extent, the Comox Valley Regional District Board agreed to work together, develop an air quality roundtable, which would work across not just government, but include representatives from the community, from Island Health, and from private business as well, to come up with a 3-year project that would address air quality from multiple angles. And primarily they're looking at trying to reduce the PM 2.5, since that is the concerning level in the Comox Valley. So the first meeting of the roundtable was held already in September. The next one is scheduled for today. So we're really eager to hear, what's happening and what the discussion is around the table. A state of the air memo has been prepared and has provided some background info, and it had a lot of details around what air quality issues there are. It's posted online at the Comox Valley Regional District's website, which is comoxvalleyrd.ca/airshed roundtable. So while we're only at the start of the process, tackling a complex issue like this one will require all of us to really work together. And I'm really pleased to see the commitment from everyone to helping to improve the quality of air in the Comox Valley. The other topic I wanted to just talk about, specific to Area B, is around sewer planning and upgrades at the sewage treatment plant. So specific to, the Curtis Road area and the areas around Lazo where sewage infrastructure crosses through Area B. The Comox Valley Sewer Service has been working on a liquid waste management plan for the future of the service. Because it's providing sewer and wastewater treatment for the city of Courtenay and the town of Comox. And because that infrastructure is located in Area B, residents in Area B were invited to sit on that liquid waste management plan table. So we have a representative from the Crota Beach area and one from Curtis Road. So the feedback that you, members of the public, have provided has been shared with the roundtable and vice versa. The roundtable has put forward some of the recommendations, both the long lists and the short lists that have come up through the process of how conveyance and changes in sewage treatment are going to be moving forward. And in 2021, there will be some recommendations going forward to the Sewage Commission on those shortlists. So we certainly heard feedback from Area B, specifically in the Lazo area, that residents were concerned with the impact of a new conveyance of pipes on the impact on their groundwater. Many people in that area have wells, and we're concerned what a potential break in or leakage in a pipe might do to their water, their drinking water. So our staff have worked with residents. There was an online session with residents in the Lazo area, just to hear the concerns, but also describe what our staff are looking at and what the technical folks are looking at in terms of pipe safety. Earlier this year, again, after the Sewage Commission heard the many issues that residents in Curtis Road raised around odor, the Sewage Commission approved a $7 million upgrade to the treatment plant, including the covering of the bioreactors, treatment of the air through a better chemical scrubber. So that work is expected to be completed in the summer of 2021. In fact, an invitation of tender just closed about 10 days ago. So we'll be hearing who will be taking on that work very soon. So thank you to all of the folks who've provided feedback to both Airshed Roundtable, but also to the Sewage Commission on some of the issues that they felt were really important. We certainly hear you, and I look forward to continuing to advocate for your issues at any time. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Director Grieve to give the update from Area C.
Thank you, Director Hamir, and thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to log in today. I've got a couple of very exciting initiatives that are going forward to speak to. One is the roadside recycling pickup. For a bit of historical context, when I was first elected, of course, we had the Strathcona, Comox Strathcona Regional District, which still exists in the Comox Strathcona Waste Management, because we worked together on our solid waste. At that time, we had about 9 different landfills, some remote landfills, none of which were conforming to the Ministry of Environment specifications. Since that time, we've moved legions forward. We now have a proper engineered compliant landfill in Cumberland, and we're looking to take waste from the majority of that catchment area. One of the things that we discovered a number of years ago, we did a garbage composition report, And that's when they actually took garbage from different areas, including the electoral areas, and opened them up and actually assessed what was inside them. And what we discovered in a lot of instances was that if you take out the organics from the garbage bags and recyclables that we already have markets for, it reduces the amount going actually into landfill by almost 50%. That's no small figure when you consider that one of the new engineered cells usually runs about $5 million and is good for 4 to 5 years. So it doesn't take a mathematician to realize we can almost half our expenditure here and double the life of the landfill. So in 2013, we went forward with the referendum on a roadside recycling program, and it was defeated. But at the time, I think it was maybe a little too far reaching. We had taken in the whole area, including all the very rural areas and farms where there's 1 kilometer between mailboxes. We heard after the referendum that a lot of people still wanted to look at it. And of course, as times change and people are more sensitive to recycling and things like that, it's up again for discussion. Some of the people, I guess, out there have received notifications in the mail and have participated in our original outreach. We've had over 3,000 people comment on roadside recycling, so it looks like it's something to move forward on. Early in the new year, we're going to be doing a phase 2 on that, and that's where we'll be honing it down to which areas are going to be the areas that would most benefit and would be most economical for a unified garbage and recycling program. So we're hoping if it does go forward and we do fine tune it, that we're looking probably 2022 to start the program. The other thing that's really important, I think, in my area, and this is specific to mine and Arzinas as well, is the Merville Fire Department. Merville and Solom Farnham fire districts have been under contract with the city of Courtenay for years. Over that time, the Merville Fire Department, which was an improvement district type fire department, which ran on its own and had its own tax requisition, was busy socking away money. So for over 20 years, they've been saving up for a fire hall. It turned out that a few years ago that the Merville fire service decided to turn it over to the regional district. And at that time, we started looking for economies of scale and how we could actually move forward on a fire department. We had a number of meetings at the Merville Hall, and it was enthusiastically supported by the people that turned up to the meetings. In fact, the last meeting we had, we ended up signing up, I think, 17 firefighters for the new hall, which have been training over the last year and a half with the Oyster River Fire Department to get their accreditation. It's a big issue in our area because we have a lot of properties that are not benefiting from being close to a fire department or fire hydrants. And as such, they're paying enormous amounts of costs on their insurance. This is guaranteed almost to help with your insurance costs, as well as the fact that we have first responders only minutes away from your door that can turn up if there's a medical emergency. So that's, as I say, not just the Merville Fire District, it's also the Farnham, Solom Farnham area. So it's quite a big area. Right now, we're paying about $250,000 rough and ready to the Courtenay Fire Department for the service. That money is going to be turned around and put into, if we get approval on the approval process, turned into a down payment on a fire hall and apparatus, roughly to the tune of about $2 million. Process. So there's an opportunity for people to register the disapproval if they don't want to go ahead with this. If that does happen, then we'll have to rethink it, maybe go to referendum. But my feeling is it's a win-win for everybody in the area. The only other thing I'd like to mention would be the Mount Washington, which also does not have a fire service up there. they've had some pretty close calls lately, and some fires that I think Oyster River and Courtney tried to respond to, but of course the lag time is enormous. So again, there was a referendum a couple of years back that when mines were focused because of the fire that had just happened in the previous months, and it was finally approved. And so we're moving ahead on that. We've already done the geotechnical and some preliminary design on how it's going to look. Again, we're going to probably have to go to some kind of approval process to approve the borrowing bylaw so we can borrow enough money to actually put it forward. Again, hopefully 2022 or something like that. We might have we should have a fire department up in Mount Washington, because it is a huge economic driver for the Comox Valley. And with the fire service up there, it may be the impetus they need to maybe get a major hotel chain or something like that, which would benefit everybody as well. So that's about it for me. There's a lot of other initiatives out there, but those are the big ones. And I've been keeping my fingers crossed that they're going to move forward. So thank you once again, and back over to Colleen.
Thank you, directors. That was great. We had a very brief blip there, Director Grieve. And so just in case it was the important message you delivered in that pause, I wanted to just say for the Merville Fire Hall AAP, the residents have until, in my notes, December 7th to return that information. Okay, great. So
December 7th, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So the Q&A session is now open. If you have any questions about the topics that the directors have raised, please feel free to drop them into that chat window, as I mentioned at the beginning, and we'll work through them as soon as we can. I have a couple of questions that have come in by email, so I can start there. But I'm also just sharing a slide that has some of the web page addresses for the topics that the directors covered, in case you want to scribble down those extensions. It makes it really easy to find that information on the web page directly. So I will start with a couple of those email questions. Director Hamir, I'm going to start with you. We had a question come in about the Lazo Road and whether or not there are plans for a bike path along there. The person raises concerns about safety of pedestrians and other users along that road stretch. Do you have any information to share on that?
Thanks very much for that question. We've certainly heard at the board concerns about not just biking, but also walking safety around Lazo. The shoulders there are very narrow, very rough, and the terrain on Lazo means that there are many blind spots for drivers that are going up hills and not being able to see beyond the hill. So it certainly is a section of the valley that our staff are aware of. It's been brought to the Ministry of Transport's attention that this is a concern for the community. As residents may know, in the electoral areas, the Comox Valley Regional District doesn't really have a lot of power in installing bike paths. That usually is the purview of the Ministry of Transport, and we have to kind of wait for them to put these projects on their priority lists, and sometimes those lists can be fairly long and slow. However, we were able to come up with some ideas on certain stretches of Lazo, because there is already a greenway in a portion of Lazo. So earlier this year, pre-COVID, and in late 2019, we had discussed with staff about trying to do some connections between greenways and existing bike paths that already existed, and working with the town of Comox. And we were so close in being able to start that work, but there were personnel changes, and then COVID hit. So sadly, that project is delayed. It's not forgotten, but it is delayed. So it looks like we're going to be going forward with the work, and planning work is going to happen next year. And then we're hoping to have construction on the project for 2022. At the same time, the regional district is still doing some more design work for a short portion of Lazo Road that crosses the marsh. and we're working with the Ministry of Transport on that section and specifically. But it also is working in conjunction with the Ministry of Transport. So a lot depends on their timeline. I would like to just put a shout out to the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition, because they just presented to us this week. And at the behest of the Ministry of Transport, they actually came up with a short list of roads in the Comox Valley that have both high bicycle use and concerns in terms of shoulder and speed limits on those roads. And Lazo was certainly listed there, as were other roads around the regional district. And we're really hoping with the advocacy work of the Cycling Coalition and the regional district that we'll be able to move Modi into the direction of more bicycle paths for us. So thanks. Definitely on our radar. It's something that we want to see happen we know people are being more active outside, and we want to encourage that type of transport and move away from cars as well. So keep on asking us for these types of things. So thanks again.
Thank you, Director Hamir. Director Arbour, we have a couple questions I think that are specific for you that have come in. So the first one is, do you have an update, or is there an update that can be shared about the Cross Island Trail on Denman, specifically regarding the stairs up from the ferry terminal?
Thank you for the question, and actually that links well to Arzina's question, in the sense that for the last number of years, the CVRD has been working to put in the roadside bike path, cross island trail, multi-path from ferry to ferry. And so that effort continues. The stairs from the ferry terminal, I was there 2-3 weeks ago. I saw they poured the foundation. I haven't seen it since. Usually Doug DeMarzo, I'm not sure if any of our staff have an update. I know the work is well underway, but if I can provide that answer, I think they are working at it, and it should open momentarily. But we could probably follow up with that person for more specific details. I'm not aware of any delays. And then second, I did talk to Mark Harrison, our park manager, yesterday, and talking about for the next couple of years, looking at finishing off in the sort of Little Burnaby area. Those on Denman will know what I'm talking about, towards the Hornby Ferry. So we are starting to make plans and look for grant applications to complete that section of trail, which is key. So that's the update on that effort.
Great. And then one more for you, Director Arbour, as well, about whether or not, well, the question is about whether or not there are any specific kind of COVID security measures that could be put in place for Hornby Island. And then understanding that is kind of separate from the CVRD, maybe you can provide some insight about kind of who it is that is responsible for those kinds of regulations and in enforcing them.
That's great. Thank you. That's a very, very important question, and one that has been top of mind for the last number of months. When COVID happened, there's actually 2 COVID groups, one on Denman and one on Hornby, and there is a meeting of the Hornby one where we discuss issues like this. The CVRD does run the Emergency Operations Center for the Comox Valley, and it is active. It was very active in March, April, May, June, and perhaps we may see a ramp up again as we enter the second wave. That remains to be seen. So you are right. Ultimately, the province makes all those key decisions around travel restrictions, enforcement, and all that. And the role of local government is to support their efforts where appropriate. In terms of the travel to Hornby, I know we have a good collaboration with HiSeek and HIRA, and the HornbyIsland.com website as a big advisory for people to encourage travel, not to travel to the islands if unnecessary, and to observe all measures. So look for an update. I know I just put on Facebook, on my Facebook page this morning, we are starting to lose the lid on COVID on Vancouver Island. And I think all local governments and other governments are probably going to update the guidance. We'll wait for the province starting from the top and go from there. So, but if there's any further question, can contact me, because I can feed those into the COVID groups on the islands for sure. And we can go from there.
Great, thank you. Director Grieve, the next question is for you. the person is asking about whether or not there are plans or where on the priority list is plans for additional access for residents on Macaulay Road. The concern is about the singular access in and out of that area and the need to be able to open up additional options.
Well, once again, it's odd because being a local politician, when you're on campaign, over half the questions you get are usually regarding the provincial government jurisdictions, and this is one. Things like flooding, road construction, culverts, ditches, and all that stuff, and bike paths are all the purview of the province of BC ministries. Of course, generally, the Ministry of Transport does not go looking for new roads unless, of course, it's through subdivision. If there's a subdivision development, then usually it's the proponent that puts in the roads themselves to the subdivision. Of course, Macaulay Road goes all the way and just about touches Highway 19. But in the day when they're building the highway, the Macaulay Road area was very adamant in not connecting through. There is, however, emergency egress and egress paths that we have all through the Comox Valley, at least in most areas, that are there for emergency use. But as of what I've heard from the ministry, there seems to be no appetite at all to punch a road in right now that would be open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Grave. That's really helpful. So I'm going to flip back over to a couple more email questions. I'm going to go back over to Director Arbour. There's a question about HiSeq and the tax collection to support that organization, how it's done and how it's allocated and what opportunities there are for potential change. If you could maybe expand on that a bit, give a bit of a summary overview.
Thank you. And just setting a bit of a framework for that question. On the islands, a lot of our services through local government are contracted out to local organizations, grassroots organizations. So I think on the islands, people know on Denman, DERA and Denman Works. So two contractors of the regional district, and on Hornby, we have HIRA and HiSeq, and HiSeq's role is to advance economic development projects. So in terms of the question around how does the tax and all that work, basically all taxes just come from Hornby. We used to contribute to the larger regional economic development function, but about 10, 12 years ago, the service was repatriated, if you will, to for more control from Hornby residents. So they have a local board. They tend to create a 5-year strategic plan where they lay out their goals and in which areas they're going to work on. That plan has just expired, and I know they're working currently on an update to the plan, re-engaging the community to look at the next few years of what should be the focus of their work. So there are good partnerships with all those local organizations between CVRD. Ultimately, the board has to approve all the budgets, but the budgets tend to be developed in a grassroots manner on the islands by residents and mostly volunteer board members who join those organizations.
Great, thank you. Another email question, this one for Director Grieve. A resident wondering what the long-term plans are for water and sewer services and regulation in electoral area C.
Well, electoral area C is a vast area running all the way from Comox Lake to the Oyster River, so it's very varied. We do have, of course, the Comox Valley water system that's services the Marston, Arden, England Road, Greaves Crescent area. That's tied into to the same system, of course, of Comox and Courtenay and a lot of Area B. So we're trying to amalgamate the electoral area water services right now into one service, and that's going forward. In the north, we have the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Service area, which we share with Area D from Strathcona Regional District. And that services a lot of people up in the northern part. That's moving ahead right now with a new well project. So we're going to be adding to our capacity up there. Insofar as the areas in between, most of them are serviced by on-site water people with wells and whatever. There's nothing on the near horizon to blanket the entire area, because it'd be immense. So right now, there's that's the area. As you know, the water ends, I think, just about at the country market. Maybe Director Hamir can answer that one. It goes up U-Bahn Road, I think, and that's about it. I think Crystal Rose is on there to jump in anytime, correct me. But yeah, no, there is water systems. There's a few private systems out there as well, and that's what we've got. Insofar as sewer goes, I think Director Arbour has mentioned the fact that it's taken about 30 years to get an extension to the Courtenay-Comox system. The Comox Valley Sewer has finally decided that they will extend services beyond their boundaries, and that's a real big plus. So, we'll see how it goes in the future. There was a referendum in the Miracle Beach, Saratoga Beach area for a sewer that was defeated, I think, in 2005. So maybe that's a little premature, but we can always revisit that again, because that area is a growth node and would probably benefit immensely from a liquid waste management plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Grieve. I know that's a big question with a lot to cover. So I don't see any other questions that have come into the chat, and we've covered our email questions. So to give everybody one last chance to post a question that they might have, I am going to indulge in a question for each of you, and just to give that opportunity for any final questions to come in. So I'm going to go to you, Director Hamir, with this first. I guess as we're looking to wrap up 2020, looking ahead to 2021, are there any highlights or things that you're looking forward to, or things that you see as being kind of a key focus in the year to come for you?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. I think a project that was really near and dear to my heart that I just took, I love so much, I've spoken to other groups about this, is the way that the regional district worked with our community partners when COVID really erupted to help meet the food security needs of the community. We had the shutdown of the Comox Valley Food Bank. The St. George's kitchen was shut early on. And so we had a lot of emergency food needs in the community. And one of our local community groups that the regional district works closely with the Food Policy Council is Lush Valley. And Lush Valley scrambled. They had some vans available, and they were in touch with the restaurateurs who had to close down so quickly, but had a lot of food in their coolers. They were able to get a lot of that food distributed out into the community so that no one was going hungry. And by working with Lush Valley and the city of Courtenay, Lush Valley set up a food distribution hub in our curling rink, which was no longer in use anyways, and worked with the city of Courtenay in one of their facilities to develop a hot kitchen, so to deliver hot meals to the, sorry. So that type of project is one that I think there are lots of opportunities for us to continue working with and moving forward. We have a lot of interest in trying to create a food hub here in the Valley. And I know we've had our Economic Development Society put forward an application for the Merville Hall to become a food hub. And I think there's even other opportunities that we haven't even looked at. So moving forward in 2021, I look forward to us working with our community partners like Lush Valley, like the different Farmers Institutes and the Farmers Market Association to come up with some projects that really meet some of the needs that we have around food aggregation and distribution. So looking forward to supporting all of the people in the food industry, from farmers to processors and beyond, to help make more local food available and support local farmers in being more successful.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Director Arbour, Sorry to put you guys on the spot, but I will pass the mic over to you with the same question, looking ahead for the year to come.
Oh, I think we have 2 years left to the term, so that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Getting us through the COVID era is really important, and in some ways it requires some good discipline on all the files we're dealing with. I'm also the chair of the sports commission, and I'm full for the Valley, and I fully realize the impact it's having on all recreational programs, on parents, on everybody, and trying to keep things going, despite all the restrictions, and providing opportunity is important. Other external boards, I'm still on the Island Corridor Foundation board, and we've had a couple of big things that happened this year, both a court case and also a study with the government to look at the reestablishment of rail. So, and on library, I'm also the rep for the Comox Valley on libraries, and we're about to have a huge renovation at the Courtney Library. And so just making sure that goes well. For Area A, as I mentioned earlier, I think for Union Bay, Royston, really working hard on the partnership with Comox First Nation and the communities and Union Bay Estates around making sure that development happens in a sustainable manner. And core to that is the big infrastructure piece that is associated with that, while correcting historical mishaps with Royston and Union Bay not having sewage infrastructure and the impacts on Bain Sound. So that's a big focus. In terms of the Hornby and Denman Island, I think one that I hear often, and even early in the mandate, which is a frustrating topic, but really the whole internet issue, I think keeps coming back. There's an effort right now by both islands that has, over the last couple of years made great headway, but it's still unclear how we'll get that to the finish line in terms of having decent internet on the islands, which then supports young families and others to actually live here year round and moving off sort of more of a cottage kind of situation on the islands. Those are just examples of my focuses, but getting through the winter and being diligent with taxpayers' money while keeping programs going, I think that's probably the key thematic as we move through COVID for me.
Great. Director Grieve. Over to you
Colleen.
for thoughts. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad Daniel brought up the COVID issue, because one thing we know for sure is that it's not just the physical health that suffers; it's the mental health, and we see that all over. We have the COVID issue is actually being dwarfed by the overdose issue out there when it comes to deaths. So it's huge. One of the things we found when we shut down our recreation was that outdoor recreation became so important. The Comox Valley is famous for its natural amenities. People move here and take a great cut in pay just so they can come to the valley and enjoy the vistas we have and the outdoor recreation opportunities. We talk about mountain biking, we talk about the skiing, we talk about just generally taking advantage of our beautiful nature out there. And my feeling is that we have to keep moving forward and work with our municipal partners and also with the private forest land and the farmers of the area to try to create the trails and keep them open and access to some of the most beautiful areas in the Comox Valley. And I don't want to say the Stoughton Falls word, but I will, because it's very important that we preserve these areas and work any way we can to try to get the access for the public for these areas. I think there's a lot more that's been done in the last couple of years together with our municipal partners on coordinating our trails and pathways and greenways. So I want that to go forward. And we talk about the Rails with Trails, that kind of a thing, the one spot trail, working again respectfully with the farming community to try to get that to move forward. I think that this is a legacy that we can actually do as elected officials in electoral areas, because we have such few levers of power as it is. But one is parks. I think that's a really big one, and it's appreciated not just by the electoral areas, but by the entire Comox Valley. And one more little thing, I just want to dig in for our staff. I'd like people out there to realize that we have a very competent and dedicated staff, in the regional district, and they work tirelessly. You know that when you get an email at 9 o'clock at night. So, you know, they're out there, they have our concerns at heart, and they're working very hard, especially in these trying times. I think that they deserve a big thank you. Thank you.
What a lovely note to add to that, Director Grieve. Thank you so much. We had one final question come in during that time, and it was actually just about how to be able to follow up with you guys. So I'm going to take that opportunity to use my closing slide, which has where you will be able to find this webinar afterwards posted. If you have any other kind of general questions, you can reach out to the communications email address, the general CBRD line. But I've also shared the director's email addresses and phone numbers because I know they're happy to have conversations with any of their constituents about any of these topics further. So please feel free to reach out to them directly. So with that, I am going to say my thank yous. We are just a couple minutes ahead of schedule, which is something to celebrate. We thank you all for giving us the time today to hear these updates and to share your questions. And we hope to be able to do this again soon. So until then, please be well and stay safe. And we hope to see you again. Thank you.